Welcome to the Dakar 2022 preview show. I just caught my hand on my microphone cable there. My name is Lel Pavey. This is Break Magazine. This is something we do every single year. We do a preview show with Sai and Sai, my best friend, and my dad. And so in this podcast, we are going to talk about all things to do with the 2022 edition of the Dakar. What's happening, what's going on, who's doing what. But before that, we premiered it on YouTube probably minutes before you were watching this. Our new video comparing Sai's very own Yamaha factory Dakar rally bike to a relatively production T7, Yamaha Tenere 700, to kind of take a look at the difference between those two. So we're also going to talk a little bit about that in this podcast. If you haven't seen that, what are you doing, man? Go and watch the video. So while you're doing that, we're going to talk about Sai, because he's going to Dakar in, 12 hours time. You're leaving to go and get a plane to go to Saudi. So how's it all going? How's prep been? How are you feeling? How's your bank balance looking?
Compared to last time, it's been smooth sailing. So yeah, but plenty of opportunity for things to go wrong. I'm still waiting for a result from my PCR test, and still got to get a flight and another PCR test when I get there and all that stuff. But it's the same for everyone. So, but yeah, it's all good. It's relatively in hand, touch wood, and just ready to go. So it's all good.
So have they given you any indication of how the COVID situation works on the rally? Obviously the last time you went, there was no COVID. That's a bonus. So now there is COVID. And a few people have already had to drop out because they failed their final COVID test, I take it. So yeah, what's the situation? How does it work on the rally? Do you know any of that? Or?
Yeah, so they've been pretty clear about it from the outset. It's based on basically your vaccination status and then where you're flying from. So like red list countries have to do more tests beforehand, like South Africa and a bunch of other African countries and like Taiwan or something like that. But yeah, so for me, for someone from the UK, I had to do a PCR test 72 hours, within 72 hours of departure from the UK. When you get to Jeddah, you don't have to quarantine or anything like that. You just need another PCR test the day after you arrive. And they do that in a kind of Dakar area next to the offroad park.
Le Bobel.
Yeah. It's all in one place in this kind of sports complex. So yeah, and like you said, there's at least two people who've tested positive. One South African rider, Kristen Landman.
The female?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, she's really good at riding a motorbike.
Yeah, well good. And then Danielo de Villiers, just now I saw on the news. So yeah, it's hitting people already. So and yeah, I'm guessing there'll be more.
Yeah.
Between now and the start as well. So just doing everything I can to make sure I'm not one of those people. So, but there's only so much you can do.
So I had a quick read of the rule book earlier, because that's the kind of fun guy I am on a Boxing Day. And so it's quite interesting that ASO are actually, for one of the few times in their rule book where they're quite polite about people catching COVID. So if you do get it, they either give you options on a deferral or 350 euros and your money back. That's you lose 350 euros as an admin fee. I hate to break it, that's an expensive admin fee. That's
steep in it. It's all relative, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, at this point, it's like 0.5% or something. So you're like,
and it's not even one Dakar unit, to be fair.
No, it's not one Dakar unit. So while I was in there, I was reading some of the other rules as well. And speaking of Dakar units, some of the things and the fines they give you for really obscure things are horrendous. So if you're caught without one of the official stickers on your bike, it's 2 Dakar units or 1,000 euros, as that's known to normal people. So if you're good at maths, you'd figure out what one Dakar unit is there as well. Good job. So what about you, Dad? What have you been up to? You look like you've got a motorbike t-shirt on.
But that's the only t-shirts I own, isn't it?
So have you been paying much attention to anything Dakar, or have you been floating around waiting for it to start?
No, I've been strangely ignoring it, to be honest. Yeah. Oh. And so I am kind of full armchair, as you can see, armchair pundit today.
Armchair pundit. I'm hoping for the most wisdom from you then.
I know absolutely nothing. I'm going to make it up as I go along, as usual.
Sounds wonderful.
Like when I used to write it, to be fair.
So, to kick things off, we've actually got some show notes, ladies and gentlemen. Shared show notes on Google Docs. I've been listening to some podcasts that are way better than mine and taking some notes. So, to start with, I want to kind of go back a little bit for most of the people watching this an hour, for our patrons, a day. And talk about the rally bike versus ADV video that we made, which I think we made a month ago now. We filmed it. It didn't take me a month to edit. It took me a month to get around to editing it. So I'm going to start with you, Dad. What was his rally? Obviously, we covered it a lot in the video. I tried to keep as much detail in there as I could. But between the three of us, we managed to put down like 45 minutes of actual talking. And that's way too much. So I didn't include everything in the video. For you, what was Si's rally bike like to ride, and how different was it to other rally bikes that you've ridden in the past?
I think it was a lovely revelation for me to ride Si's bike, actually, because when I sit there and look at it from the outside, it's a big, tall bike. It looks at least as big as our last Dakar bikes that we raced on in 2015.
Probably bigger.
And yet to ride it, it was for sure a generation moved on from what we rode. And obviously I'd love to ride like the newer generation KTMs, etc., but I haven't. Our generation KTMs were the last carburetor ones. As I say, we went on those in 2015, and they were actually generation old then.
Well, they were also the same chassis as the last generation 690.
Yeah, exactly. As the sort of my era, I guess. The big bikes, and I think the thing that struck me the most, like I the suspension and progression. The suspension and motor, I'm going to say, is probably no better than other things I've had. As you know, I had that factory Öhlins in 2013, which was incredible. And the motor on our KTMs, those carburetor motors, the 450 motors, they were incredible as well. But the biggest difference for me was the actual chassis, and especially the lack of input that the whole nav tower had on the way the bike handled. Like every rally bike I've ridden, that kind of weight of the nav tower hanging out the front of the bike, no matter how good you got your suspension working, it always made it feel like the front wheel pushed in corners and the steering was heavy, and it was difficult to control the front end. And you learn to ride around that, especially over the period of the rally. Like none of us are factory riders, so we're usually not riding our rally bike much until the rally. We're doing all our practicing and training on enduro bikes, and so it usually takes you those first few days, like you pointed out last time, that first one or two stages, like the rally bike's super alien, and you just don't know what's going on with the whole front end, and you have to kind of adapt to it and learn to ride around it.
Well, for us in the UK as well, those the terrain and the speed is like super alien as well. So even if you do ride your rally bike a lot here, it doesn't translate. It's so alien.
When you end up tiptoeing around that, kind of, like I said, it's the feeling that the nav tower does to the front end of the bike. And I got on Si's bike and I just didn't have that. I didn't feel like I was having to compensate for that nav tower hanging out there at all. So I'm not quite sure how they achieved that, but it definitely felt like they've solved the problem of that kind of big thing hanging out past the forks. at the front. It was massively reduced for me, and yeah, it just made it feel like you could, like you see a lot of the guys doing now, riding rally bikes much more like an enduro bikes. And you mentioned it in the video, and it was certainly the case for me for many years that when you rode a rally bike before, you had to kind of ride it like always with the thing straight and upright. You were never kind of going into a corner and like slamming the corner and using the clutch to explode out the corner like everyone is now,
Well, there's that little bit of footage of the BMW that I put in the video where he clips that rock, and it looks like how he doesn't die. I don't know. Do you know? And the thing looks massive, doesn't it? With the huge fuel tank on it, and like he's a tiny little dude on it. And I was like, wow. I think that was Gaston Raya in that actual audio as well.
Yeah, exactly. And like I remember Deeks and when he was riding that big boxer, and there's some great footage of him from that era, exactly the same, like just clipping a rock and being feet out, legs everywhere. But, always what we used to talk about in that era was, the goal was to try and ride the whole stage with your feet on the pegs. Like you never wanted to be riding wild enough that you had to put your foot out, because on those bikes, it was like a bit like the way we ride adventure bikes now. You try and ride them neat and tidy and smart all the time. Whereas the rally bike is like that much more back to an enduro bike that, you can hang off it. You can take your foot off the foot pegs. You can explode a corner and it's not going to swap out on you. That's how it feels to me anyway. And so that's a super nice sensation for sure. So, good step. And it's nice to get back on a 450 rally bike and remember how incredible a 450, for all our listeners out there that are adventure bike riders, an opened up 450 like they can do with a rally bike, where they can get the maximum out of a 450 because they've got the space to put their airbox and exhaust where they want, is quite incredible how those motors feel. You can only imagine that like the 450 Supercross guys have got the same scenario where they can just have all the horsepower they want. And, you don't need more than 450cc single to go fast. There's no question about that. It's quite incredible.
I think the thing that surprised me about that WR though, when you go and ride a motocross bike, like even you had a 350 motocross bike and like you've got a 450 now, the power's super aggressive. Like it's immediate and it kind of pulls you back, and your rally bike doesn't do that. It still feels like an enduro bike. It's still quite like progressive in how it makes power, but it just goes forever. And I think I said that probably about 40 times in the video. I really wanted it to come across. It pulls a lot and it does it forever. Like it just revs and revs.
I think that's what they can do with the rally motor though, because they can take that everything that a 450 can deliver, bottom end in an enduro 450 and top end in a motocross 450, and they can give it all of it because they're not constrained by the space of the chassis. So, they can have the airbox as big as they want, and they can have the exhaust as straight and as long as they want. They can do like the theoretical tuned length of of that motor.
Well, I tell you the other thing that's probably quite impressive is not like being mean about your bike side, because it is amazing, but how much more they could probably get out of a factory KTM or a Honda. Do you know? And how fun that must be to ride, to have that characteristic, but just even more. Imagine how good the sand dunes would be on a bike with that much power. Do you know? Because when we went as well, like my 450, I think the power was quite low down. Like it didn't rev out in the same way, did it? It was quite like an old school, almost like a 2005 KTM where it had loads of bottom end, but not a huge amount of like high in the rev range. And I think that's quite different to a size bike. They feel really different in my memory. Obviously, it's a few years since I rode it, but that's how I remember us being a little bit, is that they were a little bit short shifty. They didn't rev that freely at the top end.
Yeah, maybe not. They were still pretty strong though.
Oh no, they were strong as hell. Don't get me wrong. No, they were insanely strong. It was just different power, if that makes sense. Very good. So how, as someone that's about to spend 2 weeks on its high, how do you feel about your bike?
Yeah, it would be rubbish if I didn't like it, wouldn't it? No, I love it. Yeah, it was a baptism of fire when I got it, because the first time I rode it was stage 1 in 2020 at Dakar, so because of a unfortunate series of events, I didn't get to ride it before the race. So, but yeah, went through like an intense 2 weeks with it then, and I think because of that, I feel comfortable on it now. I rode it for 10 days in Portugal.
But you had some hesitations
October.
for a while, right? Like after the last Dakar, you had some hesitations about like the balance and so on. Are those kind of solved for you now? Do you feel better about those?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I wasn't sure about the suspension, about the setup, but just spending time on the bike and fiddling with the suspension a little bit, not making massive changes, just little things like setting the sag right and then moving the forks up and down the clamps and playing with the clickers and stuff like that. And just spending time in it, when I'm fit and healthy. That's the biggest thing. And so I spent 10 days in kind of Western Portugal before we shot the video, doing like pretty technical road books and pretty technical terrain, kind of more technical probably than we'll find at Dakar. And yeah, it just felt good. It was nice to play around on the bike without the pressure of having to compete as well. So I got a lot out of that, and yeah, when we were doing that video, it was nice just cruising around, and yeah, I'm just excited to ride it again. It's a pleasure to ride now, so which is what you want it to be, above anything.
So I've also got one last question for you, Si. It comes from our most active Patreon member, Ray. He wanted to ask you, where's his question? Basically how it felt getting off a rally bike and onto a really well set up adventure bike. Like, what was the adventure bike like to ride in comparison when you're coming from something that's that light and that nimble and that fast?
Heavier for sure in terms of the weight, in terms of like obviously in terms of its mass, but also in terms of how quick you can turn it and things like that. Felt instantly obviously just more refined, like as you get on the bike, the ergonomics and like how it feels, and it feels straight away like a production bike, like a adventure bike. Things like the shape of it and the geometry, not a million miles off, but just in terms of the performance and things like that, they are a long way apart.
But on the other side, like the thing, that's what adventure bikes are good at, is being comfy and fun, aren't they? And that's what totally. That's what it happens, isn't it? You get back on that T7 and you're a little bit happier to like cruise the trails, because as soon as you're on the rally bike, you feel like you've got to ride that trail as fast as you're capable of riding it. And that's obviously awesome fun, and we all love that. But sometimes even on a fun ride, that can be intimidating a little bit. And, that's where adventure bikes are nice, isn't it? They're cuddly, and they make you happy to like ride fast or just back off and cruise along and enjoy the trail ride. And you've kind of got the instant excuse that, hey, I'm on an adventure bike. I'm here to enjoy the scenery. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll take the exhaust note on that T7 over my rally bike any day of the week.
The twin, I
love that
sounds so good, doesn't it? The way it kind of it sounds amazing. Yeah. And I think as well, it's quite interesting. Like Ray's obviously asked some more questions, and I think we'll deal with those in a different podcast because it will take too long. But he talks a little bit about asking questions about the Tenere suspension. It's not like the Tenere suspension was bad. Like it's as good as an adventure bike suspension as I've ridden. I mean, I didn't get to ride the WP cone valves, unlike you did. So maybe you've got a bit more comment on that in the comparison, but I think it was, it was really good. It was not like the suspension performance of that Tenere when we were done with it was substandard. Some of the riding we went and did afterwards and how I was then able to ride it once we got the setup right was like pretty good, I think. I'm sure that'll show in the video that we make, the series that we've got coming out about that. But just the step to a full-blown rally bike with 310 mil of suspension tuned by people that really know what they're doing is like, it's just different, isn't it? It's like you can't achieve that with a rally bike, I think, with an adventure bike. So I'll deal with that question more, Ray. But yes, the suspension is very good on the Tenere. Speaking of new bikes, one of my favorite things about Dakar is when new bike time comes. It's always good. And last year, basically, KTM got their ass whooped. I don't think there's any other way to say that, is there? Like they were there, but they had to try really hard, and they got their ass whooped. And when KTM get their ass whooped, it always means there's a new bike coming. It's every time it's happened where someone's either come close to beating them, suddenly a new bike appears. I don't think it's a secret at this point. There is a picture of it. So you paid more attention to this than I did, Si. How did the landing of this new bike go in terms of results and riding and so on?
Yeah, so the first pictures of this emerged at Rally du Maroc in October. All the KTM guys, so Price, Kevin Benavides Jr. and Skylar Howes, I think it was. They were on this. Volkner and Sanders stayed on the old generation, because Volkner, they were both in the shout for the World Championship, so they kind of didn't want to kind of take a chance on the new bike for that. So basically, I can't remember exactly what happened, but none of the people on that bike finished in the top 5 or top 6. I think I think it was, I've got the results here in a sec. It was Benavides Jr. on the Husky. He was 6th, and then Kevin was 7th. So and yeah, Price was way down. I think he got lost, or I think he got really lost one day actually. I saw how he was so far back, but Volkner was 2nd, Sanders 3rd on the old generation, and
importantly, a Honda won.
Yeah, and Honda's new signing, Quintanilla. So
who
well.
Not publicly, but he kind of made the point last year that he didn't like the bike anymore, that it wasn't fit for purpose. So for those not well versed in the minute details of a rally bike, which is not a production bike, obviously, really, they only make 75 of them a year. This bike seems to be incredibly different to the previous generation. A lot has changed, an all new frame, but also like a new frame idea, right? So tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so the KTM rally bikes historically have always had the kind of trailless frame, which looks like a piece of scaffolding going up the side of the bike, with the tanks off when you can see it. But this one has got more of a kind of traditional beam frame, or steel beam frame that KTM use on their other motocross enduro bikes. So yeah, and then the rear tanks are then part of the subframe, it looks like there. So yeah, very different philosophy, it looks like. And the tests that they did in Morocco and subsequently and before that and all that, they must have been positive, because looks like they're running that bike at Dakar. So yeah.
So I know you know a little bit of the history of this, Dad. What do you think? Because this is not the first time they've tried this idea, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, when they first went 450, and actually KTM were sort of instrumental in the whole push for Dakar to go to 450 actually back in the day. And their very, very first one was literally the LC4, like the old Dakar bike with a detuned 690 motor in a 450, and they actually made that work pretty well. But that was only ever a factory bike. They never made it production. When they came with the first production 450, it was still like you described it, the trellis frame, rigid, long.
The biggest swing arm I've seen on a bike that wasn't like a street bike ever.
Yeah, exactly. Because the whole thing is, again, if you go back Dakar, it was faster, higher speeds, and, guys were riding them still, even though it was a 450, still riding them like the big bikes. And then slowly over the last few years, they've got more, like I just described about riding size bike, more able to ride them explosively, like an enduro bike, and attack and aggress a lot more. And I think it was our generation one, they went back to the drawing board and kind of tested then with the motocross motor, the enduro motor, and the classic dirt bike chassis. And they again went back and stuck with the trellis frame. Again, long, stable, stiff, good for that, in theory, good for that high speed straight line, stable environment. And it's served them very, very well. And also, linkage. And then that's what's kind of quite interesting and ironic at the moment is, what we sort of heard last year was that the riders that were complaining about the KTM were complaining that it actually wasn't good enough in the high speed stuff and stable enough. So it's interesting that they've now kind of gone to the direction of Honda and Yamaha where this looks, I mean, we don't know all the dimensions of the chassis, but it looks a little bit more like based on, an enduro type frame rather than a trellis type frame, which you would think is going the opposite way. But hey, they're clever people, and what KTM has proved time and time again over the last 20 years is they're very good at developing stuff very quickly and very good at, I mean, look at even what they've done in moto world. They've come from nowhere with no knowledge, and they've developed competitive bikes super quick. And I think you're never going to sit here from the armchair and critique. They've gone the wrong way with their chassis, because for sure they won't have.
We'll only know in 2 weeks' time. Really? Do you know?
We will, yeah. And again, we only know this sort of third hand, but from other friends of ours that were kind of involved with the Yamaha team before, that was one of the things that Yamaha said they couldn't, they weren't doing anywhere near the testing of KTM. Like what KTM's really good at is spending 1 million hours out there testing. And we've seen in the Instagram and stuff the last 2 months, like there's been so much footage coming out of all the KTM riders testing in UAE and Morocco.
Well, the PR machine is strong, isn't it?
About that, aren't they? Yeah,
the PR machine is
with all that, aren't they?
So I think the one interesting thing about this, and it's not something we talk about that much in Durabike world, because it actually, I think it's generally quite a positive thing. Steel frame. Most of the Euro brands use a steel frame. It's great for enduro, loads of flex, loads of feel. The Honda, even though it's like a cradle frame, it's a big old aluminium spar. It's like, and when you ride an aluminium frame motocross bike, they're stiff. Even when you make them soft, they're stiff. And I think, I wonder how much of a difference that makes. They like the trellis frame because it was long and stiff and rigid, really. And when you go to a steel cradle frame, maybe they've done it because they can get the flex the way they want, but it could be one of those things that could prove to be a mistake. I mean, we're sat on an armchair, obviously, but they struggled with it in motocross for a really long time as well, didn't they? For the same reason, is that it's hard to get a steel cradle frame with a backbone like that to be really stiff. Just food for thought. I'm sure we'll find out. But because even like size rally bike, like the WR converts pretty well. It's an aluminium frame bike. It makes a big difference. And when you ride like you've got a motocross bike at the moment. I obviously the suspension's stiff, but the chassis will also be stiff, and I'm sure you can feel that. When I rode the new WR 250 2022 version the other day. It's an enduro bike, but it feels super stiff, and it's great around a motocross track because of that. And it's not very good when you need to feel slippery things under the wheels. So maybe that makes a difference. So speaking of other new bikes, I got quite excited about this one because I think it looks really good. The Sherco.
Obviously. Yeah, it's the best one.
I mean,
and
the fluoro
is going to win.
I'm not vibing on the fluoro yellow. They could have just gone with like the nice blue and carbon vibe. But so my first thing that I like kind of picked up on with this is it looks more finished than it used to.
No, and I think the only thing that's super annoying is like with the Honda and with that, why can't we buy that?
Yeah.
Maybe you
it's
can.
So annoying, isn't it?
But this is one of the points.
Awesome.
One of the points I made in the notes, and I think it's quite an interesting point with Dakar because I was reading some old stuff about the Dakar and the introduction of the production rule the other day, and the production rule exists primarily to kind of keep it fair, but somehow Honda and KTM have got around this. So KTM just sell you the factory bike. So they don't have to have it based in production because the factory bike is the production bike. And no one knows how Honda get around it. I don't know how you get around a production rule without making... maybe they make enough factory bikes a year, they can call it a production bike. Maybe that's it. They produce 15 of them a year and that's their way. But do you feel like someone like Sherco, because their bike has to be based on a production model, that they're a little bit hampered by this as well? Because they have to use the same bike like you own, essentially.
And does it still have that written somewhere in the ASO rules about the production thing then, does it? Because I haven't seen it for years. You're right. It did come in years ago for that reason. It was kind of, I can't remember when it started.
Pre-Petterhansel. The production rule was pre-Petterhansel.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So even a super production bike had to still have... I think it was like 50 units.
Yeah, that's it. When Honda, because they did it with the Africa Twin, didn't they? That year they kind of had a factory Africa Twin, and they made 50 customer bikes available. Mm-hmm. Back in Johnny Watson Miller was one of the dudes that rode one of the production replica ones in Dakar, and then that EXP that Honda took, the 2-stroke 400 2-stroke, they made an exception to the rule, and so it wasn't actually classified officially.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you get grace now, don't you? I mean, we'd have to check on that, but when Honda started, there was definitely still a production rule in place because it was commonly talked about. And from what I can see with this Sherco, the chassis, the frame looks the same as the production bike. It might not be, but it looks the same.
Yeah, it looks pretty much like my bike, to be honest. But
yeah, with some nice tanks on it. And yeah, exactly. So do you think if you are do you think the problem is that they're not in a position financially to compete? Or do you think it's that those kind of rules hamper them a little bit?
I think, for them to compete with the, with the Hondas and the KTMs, I'm going to throw out, it's not the bike that's the limit. The limit is what they can put into financing the team. I think that's the difference. Their riders are awesome guys. Who's it, Santolini and Pedrero?
I think it's just Santolino this year, isn't it?
Yeah,
they're awesome. Yeah. They're awesome guys, but they're like, they're top 10 guys, not podium guys.
Absolutely.
And they can't afford the 5 MAN trucks and, or maybe they could afford that, but they can't afford to do that and still be competitive in world enduro, extreme enduro, and obviously they put a lot of effort into those areas and they do very well in those areas. I think if they suddenly turn around and went, right, we want to be serious about Dakar, they'd hamper their core market. World trials as well. Obviously, in those three areas, they're right up there, aren't they? All the time. So I think that's the bigger problem is, to put in a big effort in Dakar. You're not throwing tens of thousands of euros at it anymore. You're throwing like millions of euros. Look at the size of that Honda team when we've been there, and they've had 4 riders and 56 staff on the team out there. And that every one of those staff members is another 10,000 euros to ASO.
Well,
like it's a huge budget, isn't it? Huge budget. And for a company the size of Sherco, I don't know how many bikes they sell a year worldwide, but
I reckon there's probably more people work for HRC than Sherco. Do you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no question. And I think that's all it is. I don't think the bike would be the limit. I think the limit is
everything
that
else.
Stuff. Yeah, and that stuff, it's so important in Dakar, isn't it? You can go to Dakar and like have a great run into the top 30, top 40 as a privateer with, one mechanic and all that. But, if you want to start being in that, there's not many that break into the top 10 running out the back of a van these days.
No.
There was obviously a few years.
Well,
back,
the guys that can do that are also guys
exceptional.
that really should have a home on a factory team. Do you know?
Yeah, a Svitko or an exceptional person.
Skylar Howes or Crashy McCrasherson. What's his name?
But even like
Skylar.
Skylar wasn't running out of the van, was he? He was running out of one of the best privateer teams, which is that those big privateer teams weren't around even 5 years ago. But your kind of big private teams that have got the setup that you can buy into. They're there, but Sherco can't do that, can't they? Because Sherco can't bolt themselves onto the side of a Baz Dakar or whatever. They'd have to suddenly become a title sponsor of one of those teams and have all those riders on a Sherco or something like that.
Yeah, totally. So let's talk about the Yamaha. It has not been a good couple of years for factory Yamaha. Sorry, Si.
It has not.
They've not had a good run of it. Van Beveren's now 4 DNFs in a row.
Yeah.
So before we talk about Van Beveren, let's talk about the bike. Obviously, we rode your bike, and your bike is
a legend, isn't he?
A very nice bike for us to ride. But no matter how much we wish we could ride like them, there is no chance on this earth that we have any idea of what it's like to go the speed they go. And the requirements.
Position coming off the top of that dune.
Something's gone seriously wrong.
It's not going well for the next few seconds.
Why are his wheels off the ground? I don't understand. And do you know, one of the interesting things about this is KTM shout from the rooftops. Every time there's a new bike, it's a massive PR exercise. There's amazing, beautiful photos. And with the Japanese brands, they don't tell anyone. Like, as far as if you were just a casual fan, the Honda that they came with in 2000 and whatever it was, 15, is the same Honda they have now. It's not. It's obviously not. It's a very different bike. A lot has changed underneath those tanks. But, and I feel a bit the same about the Yamaha. Like 4 years ago, the Yamaha was basically the same as the production bike that you've got, Si, production, quote, with different suspension, more expensive suspension again. Does anyone know if that's changed?
Not a clue, but externally, nothing much has changed in terms of the shape of the tanks and the general kind of geometry of the bike. And but I'm sure underneath, especially on the engine internals, that's where they've had most of their problems.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they've done a lot of work in the background. So. But yeah, they had a better run at Rally Dumrock. I think Van Beveren was like fourth.
Won a few stages. Looked good.
A few stages, yeah, totally. which is awesome to see considering where he's coming back from. So, for Yamaha especially, the last year or two they've just had to get their heads down and sort this shit out, because it's they're in dire straits at the end of the last one. So they desperately need 3 bikes at the finish this year.
So do you think for them, the bike, even if they fix the reliability problems, the race changed a lot. Like it was like when the last edition in South America in Peru, that bike looked good. And we know, you can see why when you ride it. Like I think that would be an amazing bike to ride in the sand dunes. It's light, it's flickable, it's not heavy on the front. It's everything you would want, I think, in the sand dunes from a rally bike. The opposite of the KTM I had, which was heavy on the front and like to suck its way into the sand dunes as quickly as possible. And I'm not allowed to say that in presence of a man that rode a battleship to the end of Dakar.
That's a piece of cake. What are you chatting about?
It's because you went through them, not over them. But that isn't Dakar anymore. Dakar, I mean, you went there. You probably have more idea than I do, but it looks like on paper, you want a bike that's really good in the rocks and really good at going fast in a straight line. And you don't have both of those. You don't have a super nimble, light feeling bike in the sand dunes and then something that is the equivalent of a spaceship, do you know? So do you think the Yam has that potential or not?
Well, that's a great question. To be honest, not one to be answered by a rider of my caliber, but you got to think that they can do something with that bike to at least be in the ball game by the second week. You know, have a couple of riders there or thereabouts near the top 5 going into the second week. And yeah, for sure. I mean, that team, it's not a factory team. It's run by a small kind of enduro team, basically. Marc Bourgeois, from World Enduro fame, he kind of runs the team, and for Yamaha France. And yeah, they don't have the backing of the factory in terms of like relative to KTM and to Honda.
Well, yeah. we did have a little bit of Chris Evans touched on this in the podcast we did with him at the start of the year. You can listen to that on all of your podcast listening apps, Spotify, Apple, you know, nice segue there. And he touched on it a little bit that the Yamaha team was also a little bit too many cooks. Do you know the problem wasn't just one problem? Do you know there's a lot going on there? So maybe that is also part of the problem.
And do you think, like, again, this is easy to sit here in the armchair and critique the best riders in the world?
That's exactly how this podcast works. We are substandard critics.
But I kind of wonder a little bit about the way Yamaha goes about picking their star riders as well, because, you know, God,
I'll have you and you and you.
Well, Van Beveren's, no question, an absolutely world-class motorcyclist and absolutely incredible. But, you know, they've kind of had this little series of guys that they pulled out of beach racing, because beach racing's so huge in France and so important for Yamaha France. And those guys in France are already superstars. So I can imagine for Yamaha marketing in France, those guys are gold. But I'm not sure they have the same breadth that other guys that are coming to Dakar now that have come from a more off-road discipline bring to Dakar. You know, like when you look at Chucky Sanders and Toby Price, and, you know, those guys have got such a breadth of skill set for riding a dirt bike. They're not just guys that can go fast.
But you say, I mean,
sand track sort of thing.
No, but you say that, like, they've got Andrew Short. I mean, obviously Andrew Short's a retired Supercross rider, but he is a much...
And he hasn't done so great either. Do you
No,
know?
he hasn't. But that's kind of the point I was about to make, is that, do you know, he was a much better motocross rider than Volkner ever was, or Sam Sunderland ever was. Like, significantly better. Like, Volkner was a great motocross rider, but Andrew Short was top 5 in the world, really.
Yep.
And
And
maybe it's because he's at
Sunderland. I don't know Volkner so well, but like I remember Sam coming up through, because the first time he ever rode was one of the years I was riding in Dubai, and he turned up there, and he was classic motocrosser.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a bit like we've seen with your Van Beverens and your Desaultrate, where they're incredibly fast. I mean, the first time he was in Dubai, he was 17 or 18 or whatever when I was there, and you know, he took 20 minutes out of Cyril and Mark on one stage, and everyone was like, who is this kid? But the next stage he was upside down, inside out with a broken motor and a broken wrist or something. I don't remember exactly, but you know, it was kind of classic motocrosser gone desert racer story. But you know, 10 years down the road, he's learned a lot of stuff. He's been stuck in the desert, and he's kind of gone through
good
that
people.
breadth of off-road experience. And that's kind of a little bit more, you know, when you see your Tobys and your Sanders and your Ricky Braybecks and those guys that have come up through off-road racing, you know, they've been superstars in their disciplines, but everyone that's been off-road racing knows that throughout that period of time, they've also spent a lot of time on their own, stuck in a forest somewhere crying. And you know, that's what I mean by having that kind of more breadth that I think with Dakar it is a big help, you know, because the first time you have that kind of stressful moment that you're never going to get on a motocross track or a beach race, like it's not happening to you in a rally. You've already been through that shit somewhere else, you know?
Well, and maybe it's even more complicated, like with Sam and Matthias. They both stepped into a team in KTM with other people around them that had been there and done that to a really high level. Do you know?
Yeah.
Villadoms is the team manager. Villadoms was on the team when Sam joined, and or like, you know, the people inside that office are really good. And Brabeck's got the same, right? I mean, you hear about these little cliques in the Honda team, and it's like Brabeck and Nacho and Johnny Campbell. Now, if you don't know who Johnny Campbell is because you're not American, the dude is like a walking, living, breathing legend of desert racing, right? Like, he might not know Dakar that well, but he knows how to win a desert race, do you know? And he knows how to survive long, gnarly desert races. And maybe that's the bit that is the gap for Yamaha, is that like Marc Bourgeois was an awesome enduro rider, but he didn't like win Dakar or come on the podium in Dakar. Maybe that's the bit they're missing. Maybe it's the money from the factory. Maybe it's just a bit of luck. I don't, you know, another year we would be sitting here and Van Beveren would have won Dakar. Do you know, he was one stage away.
I made that point when Honda first won 2 years ago, didn't I? It was literally change of team manager. Mm-hmm. And I tell you who else is on that. Yeah,
KTM did you see that?
Yeah, I did. And also, you know who else is working with Yamaha this year, though, eh? Is Andrea Petterhansel.
Oh.
So, you know, quite an interesting change. Obviously, she's not actually won Dakar, but you know, hell of a lot of Dakar experience there. Wife of 14 times winner, and herself, I don't know, how many times did she finish on a bike? Bucket loads.
Yeah.
And then she switched to cars, and first year in a car finished 5th outright.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, again, just those changes can be pretty significant, eh? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you were going to say Honda KTM.
No,
sorry,
KTM, Mark Comer. Yeah. Why? I mean, maybe they just like they needed someone to do the job, and he's the right man for the job. But it's an odd one after all these years of him not being involved and him kind of bouncing around different things to suddenly appear in the factory team. I'm not going to go any further with that because I don't know the answer.
Probably a bit of a PR thing as well, you know. They need to be seen to be doing something.
Oh. I'm gonna have a different view on that.
Undoubtedly.
Who knows the rule book better than anyone?
Okay.
Who won 5 Dakars based on the rule book?
Yeah.
But you think it's going to go like, you don't follow Formula One at all, but you do a little bit, don't you, Si? And there's been some rule book massaging going on this year. The FIM, the FIA, and wow, yeah. Maybe what you think we're going back to the rule book era?
Yeah, I mean, there's been enough little niggles the last few years with Honda, hasn't there, about playing with the rules and stretching the rules. And for those that don't know, back in the Mark Comer or Cyril Dupre 10 years of dominance between those two, it was literally they both had team managers each year that spent the whole rally with the rule book in their hands at the start line, and the victory between the two of them was definitely played out on the rules year after year. And so, and then he went worked for the organisation for 2 years. So there's no one in the world that knows how to play that rule book better than that man, I don't think. So yeah, there you go. I put my cards on the table now.
So here's an interesting the next part of this conversation, teams, riders, and so on, is the rider swaps. Not swaps, but we're not playing team sports here. But essentially it did happen. Quintanilla to Honda, Benavidez to KTM. This is not news. This happened a while ago. Who wins out of that deal? If you're Benavidez, do you think that deal was done before he won? Because otherwise, why would you leave?
I don't know about that, but I'll tell you who does win is the sport. The sport wins. Obviously I've been a Dakar fan for a long old time, and this era, is the healthiest for Dakar as a competitor, because for a start, there are now 20 factory rides. There's never been a situation where a rider can go, right, I'm the current Dakar winner. I am now worth 1 million euros. Who wants me? That has never happened before. Even in the Peter Hansel day or the Cyril and Mark day, they had nowhere to go. Didn't have that kind of ability to earn money. And because there's 20 factory rides, I might be wrong about this, but I also believe that filters all the way down, and it gives more opportunity for privateers to find a way to find sponsorship, and for the whole profile of rally racing. And, the next thing, which I'm sure you're going to talk about elsewhere, is, the fact that there's now a kind of credible World Rally Championship for the first time ever. That's all kind of part of that whole big picture. And so for me, I think those individual riders win and the sport wins, because there is now a marketplace.
That's an interesting point of view. I think I like the idea of a little bit more of a competitive conversation about this. If you were one of those two, irrespective, we're just going to talk about the bike. Which one would you rather be on?
Oh, you mean if you're Benavidez, which bike
would you
go for?
You rather walk into the team with 6 guys that can win, or 3 guys that can win and some internal politics, but maybe a better bike? I'm talking about Honda. For anyone who hasn't kept up there, I was talking about Honda. Come on, guys, we can't leave this much silence in a podcast.
I think they've all got enough belief in their own ability that as long as they feel like they can have the bike set up how they want to set it up, and they believe the team's going to support them, I think they'll go with them. Well, I think they'll go with them. It's such a short career. I think they'll go with a massive pay. Merriman did it. Stefan Merriman was the first guy in enduro ever to make $1 million euros out of racing enduros, and he did it by playing exactly that game. I'm the best guy. I'm going to go with whoever's going to pay me.
So
I don't really care.
On a separate note, I think Quintanilla wins just because of this photo. Like, if that is not the most Zoolander level photo you have ever seen out of a motorbike rider, he deserves the fucking trophy now. Like, that is a man. He's got smoke behind him. All of the Honda shots are the same, but his one 1,000 times better. Look at him. I'm scared right now. Like, Anyway, that's a completely different story. What a beautiful photo. So, you guys have managed to like really skirt that. The one other big change was Sam to Gas. I didn't see this coming. Maybe you did. And it's an interesting one because I don't know how the Gas setup is, but the Husky setup for a long time has been kind of on the back of the KTM setup, a little bit smaller. It's the same, but it's not the same. Why do you think they did that? Do you think he gets a pay bump? Do you think it's his last contract? Do you think he retires at the end of this? What do you think or is this just Pira and KTM going, we need to push Gas super hard and like Daniel Sanders isn't enough?
I think mostly it's just kind of to balance out the rider stable, you know, with Sam, they had 4 on KTMs, 2 on Huskies, and then just Sanders on the gas. So I think in that respect, it's just kind of balancing the stable kind of thing. So yeah, I think mostly that. I mean, Sam's got like the same mechanic and the same everything. It's just on another end of the garage, kind of all a couple of bikes down in the garage. So I'd be surprised if it was anything different than that. I'm guessing it was the end of his contract with KTM, the orange KTM. So yeah, I mean, he's going to be just as good on that gas as.
I mean, the bike's going to be the same, right?
I mean, picture that, isn't it?
It is a hell of a picture. I feel like he's going to struggle to find his way because he hasn't taken the white paper off his road book yet. Yeah, hell of a picture. A couple of other interesting things, just little tidbits. There's some interesting sponsorship stuff going on here. Firstly, the Gas team is on Fox riding gear. Shout out to my web shop. And it's quite interesting because in the past they didn't bother with this. The Husky team is on Kenny riding gear, but more importantly, and this is actually, I think, a little bit, I don't know what's going on here. No Rockstar logos anymore on the Husky team.
Ooh.
Also, Skylar Howe's looking chuffed.
Yeah, you would be, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well, he's getting a paycheck instead of paying, so that's quite a big shift, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he's got a lot of white going on there.
Yeah.
It's a desert-only vibe, isn't it? So, Kenny kit, Euroaz. I don't even know if they've heard of Kenny in the States. He's going to have to stop smiling like that if he wants to be Euro. He needs to look a bit grumpier and shave a little goatee in. So that's that. Let's talk about the rule changes for 2022. Some interesting little bits, not big rule changes. It's not like we had a couple, like last year or a couple of years ago where things were shifting quickly. I think the biggest one, the most interesting one from, well, just the sport in general, you touched on it already. Dakar is now part of the World Championship. It's round 1. This is a strange situation for a World Championship to be in. It's like having any other championship, but having 5 of the races in one, and then 5 other races. It's like 50% of the championship is going to come down to one race. Do you think it changes how people approach it, or are they still just going to treat it like this is the race? And I don't care about the World Championship in respect to this race, and the World Championship will come after? Or do you think they start to change their attitude a little bit to the race and take it a bit more as something that they need to finish? You have to finish because you need the points, because that's now a thing.
I think nothing changes for those guys. It's just, I mean, one comparison, I think Le Mans is in the kind of World Endurance Series, is it? In like the Le Mans 24-hour. But yeah, I mean, for those guys, it's the same. They'll go all out to win that race, and the top guys will go all out to win this one. And the fact that it's in the World Championship now just kind of raises the profile a little of the other rounds. And hopefully people that watch Dakar and hear that it's round 1 of 5, 6, whatever it is. Hopefully they kind of tune in and read a bit about the results of Rally Kazakhstan or whatever the next round is, or hopefully it turns into a good thing for the sport. But I can't see how there's a downside to it, apart from my license fee to compete went up by £400, something like that. It's ridiculous.
One Dakar unit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was
Brilliant.
last time it was 150 quid, something like that. Last time, and it was
one event
530.
international license, and now you've got to have a world championship license. Brilliant. Good old FIM.
Not even an annual license, just like a one event world championship one. So yeah,
amazing.
Have you got the right one? Shout out to the ACU. Anyway, we'll move off that.
Mental.
Go on.
Oh, I've forgotten now. I did have something to add to that, but I think you're absolutely right, Si. That is right. I'll shut up.
Also, I didn't mention this. This is a bit of a podcast trope that I like to run out every now and then. Today's beer is a Tiny Rebel Club Tropica from Cardiff, Newport, something like that. In Newport. Lovely. Gert Lash.
Called
Club. Yeah, Club. Off of Wales. Look at that.
Yeah, named after Club Iver Bach on Womanby Street in Cardiff.
Indeed. Legendary club, if you've ever been to Cardiff. Very good. 3 floors. Anyway, after that segue, next up on the list, electronic road books for elite riders. Now, there's a funky thing going on here. Rally GP, Rally 2. What the hell is that about? And is Rally GP elite riders? And if so, why don't you just call it that in the rules? Who knows? Do you know? Because I don't know.
I think that's kind of like the beginning of the kind of melding of the World Rally Championship and ASO regs. I think from next year it'll probably just be called Rally 2 and Rally GP. But
so Rally 2 is for peasants and newbies, and Rally GP is
basically Rally 2 is white backgrounds, and then Rally GP is yellow. So
okay. So electronic road books for yellow backgrounded riders. That would have been way easier in the rules. That would have made way more sense.
So do you still have all the other weirdo classes like super production, marathon as well, Si, or is that all dead now?
Last time I was there, we did have that. I don't know if they'll have that this time. I'm guessing so, but it's, that's one of the little
nobody
things
cares.
That just gets, nobody cares. Yeah, exactly. At scrutineering, they put a little SP or M on your bike.
I hope they don't get rid of it because it looks good.
Yeah.
Well, everyone used to just think it was my initials. So.
I thought that when I was a kid, because the only 2 bikes, the first year you went, the only 2 bikes I saw were yours and Stefan Pethansel's, and you both had SP. And I was like, they put their initials on their bikes. How fun. 8-year-old Leo making great logical choices. Correlation, not causation. So, airbags for the boys. Si, you have one. You have been riding in it?
I've ridden in it once. I wore it for a Welsh time card enduro, which is probably not the best event to wear it on, but how
water absorbent was it?
It was
Fully.
a dry day actually, but yeah, it was a bit warm and humid though, so it was like I was sweating a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel the weight for sure. And it's a bit restrictive, and it remains to be seen how it'll feel on a desert stage, but I'm sure it'll be not as bad as it was around Cayo Forest. So,
but not horrific.
Not horrific. Once you get used to it, it's the same as any of these things. Once you get used to it, it's not that bad. But I definitely didn't like it, but again, I wore it on a very physical event. So hopefully on a cooler environment and less technically demanding than a Welsh time card enduro. It'll be all right. But yeah.
How nervous were you to set it off on an enduro, knowing how much it costs to recharge it?
I didn't charge her up, so yeah.
Nice.
I just wore it without charging the battery on it. So
yeah, nice.
So yeah, I thought, well, I can't remember how much it is now. It's like €80 per pair of cartridges or something like that. So yeah, yeah, the event was only £50 to enter, so it's that'd be double the weekend costs.
And the algorithm is not designed for tree roots in Welsh forests.
Yeah, exactly.
He probably never would have set it off. Okay, so I got a couple of last little rule changes. These are interesting ones. I don't know how this was classed as a rule change in the book, but in Rally GP yellow background elite rider class, only one type of rear tire and only one set of tires per day allocated at the start of the race, marked every morning. Probably doesn't make that much difference because on the rear they probably will just run a rally tire. But it's an interesting one because when you do it like that, I don't really understand what the point is of that rule, because no one's changing tires in the middle of it anyway because it says you're not allowed to. So, bit odd. I don't know if you've got anything to say on that. I don't.
The only reason, well, it's probably a rule change because it was 6 tires last time, wasn't it? It's a rule change to be allowed more tires.
Ah. Someone was paying attention. And another one I found in the rule book, and I can't figure out where this has come from or why, because I Googled it and I looked on the FIM website and I got bored. Minimum helmet weight. What an odd rule. Because the minimum helmet weight is higher than some of the production helmets that you can buy from one particularly well-known light helmet brand. So that was interesting.
Strange.
I think it was over 1 kilo, the minimum helmet weight, which also rules out a lot of carbon fiber helmets and other really great helmet technologies. Maybe it's just an FIM thing. I could only find information about FIM rules on MotoGP helmets, which is obviously a different sport. Who knows? Maybe someone can enlighten us on that because I have no idea.
It was after you pointed out, it was 1,100 grams actually.
1,100. There we go. Which is not like that's not a light helmet. 1,100 grams. That's right in the ballpark of what most motocross helmets are.
Yeah, but maybe again, I didn't even know about it till you pointed it out an hour ago. But maybe there's just a little bit like ASO. As much as sometimes over the years they've driven us all crazy with what seems like crazy rules. They do think about this stuff a lot. You know, they are always at the forefront. And, you know, there's a little bit of a drive with motocross enduro helmets to kind of head almost kind of in the direction of like, not mountain bike helmets, that's too far, but you know, there's a lot of concentration now, isn't there, against high impacts and for lots of small impacts and concussions. So helmets are kind of going in that, a lot of off-road helmets going in that direction, aren't they? Whereas with Dakar, the likely impact or the risky impact that they're worried about is the big high speed crash, a bit more like a road race type crash in a way, you know, that sort of high speed, sudden stop, big head injury damage. You know, unfortunately there was quite a couple of famous ones last Dakar, wasn't there, with Santosh and so, you know, maybe that's a little bit where it's coming from, is that they want to make, you know, they're trying to, it's the first step in sort of making a point that
there needs to be a standard
to be able to deal with that. Yeah, exactly, with a high impact helmet, not just a sort of concussion, low speed concussion type helmet that, you know, that a lot of off-road is heading towards for all the right reasons, because most off-road sport is, you know, slow and lots of small falls.
Well, and high concussion consequence as well. You know, so that makes sense.
A little bit of a random thing, but did you guys watch the Santosh, Red Bull Santosh
no
YouTube last week?
No, I didn't see it.
Came out last week. Yeah, it's good. It's good. Worth a watch for those that are fans, and you know, we've all been worried about him. Obviously, he disappeared off the face of the earth with his massive crash last year. And it's him telling his story of what's happened to him in the last year and where he's at. It's pretty cool.
All right. Well, we'll pop that in the description.
Red Bull thing.
Yeah, I'll pop the link in the description. Cool. So let's talk about the route. I don't know how much you've paid attention to this site and how much you've just been packing your bags. It's different to last time in a few different ways. So first up, no empty quarter. From what I can see, my poor geographical knowledge of Saudi Arabia, no empty quarter. Why do you think that is? How do you feel about that? How do you think it changes the race? Go, 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 go.
So, from the initial route that they put out in May, they had the big stripe going down in that area. Obviously, that doesn't mean much, but
that nice vague line where they just draw some shape in the desert.
Yeah, which suggested that they would go into that area, and they said they would back then. And the empty quarter, it's, for those that don't know, it's
wait.
Literally that.
Is it empty?
It's literally empty. There's nothing. There's no access roads. There's no little villages or anything like that. It's literally empty in that eastern province down there.
That big bit where there's no towns.
Yeah. So I mean, there's one kind of road going from basically Riyadh down to Liwa, to the Saudi side of the Liwa dunes that you find in UAE, and that's where we were in 2020 when we went down there. The reason for not using that area is that it would have to be a kind of a there and back day or couple of days. Last time they used it as a marathon stage for that reason, and you kind of have to do the same. So if you were desperate to use it, you'd have a stage going down there, maybe a loop stage the next day, and then a stage going back up.
Just because of the road, because they can't get all the infrastructure anywhere else in that region. You can't unless you go 2000s Dakar and you've got big planes.
Yeah, exactly that.
Okay.
There's just one road down there to an oil. Well, there's a couple of oil fields on the route down there, and then there's nothing. You kind of go into the UAE, last time they had, unfortunately, someone die on that kind of leg in 2020, not in the dune, so to speak, but on an old oil prospecting road, basically that had been washed over with some dunes, and it was like you're basically on this road and then cross a couple of dunes to get back on the road, and it's like a messed up gravel track. So it's presents its own dangers, but not any more than any other part, really. I think the biggest danger is its remoteness down there, and you're a long way from help, even by helicopter from Riyadh. It's a long way. So
So also in the press release about the route was lots of sand. And then I watched their little arrow zooming across the desert, and in between the bits of sand, it looked like there were lots of rocks. So you've been there. You have some idea of where they're going and what the terrain is like. What do you think it's actually going to be like? Because they say lots of sand every year, but sand doesn't equal dunes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There are lots of dunes out there for sure, but it's not all dunes, and it's when they say sand, they usually mean a sandy track or kind of rolling sand hills kind of thing, which turns into a sandy track.
So the year you went, obviously last year they had a lot of problems with rocks being hidden in the sand, which is quite a unique thing. That's not something you get a lot of places. Normally you have sand or rocks, but not the two together. The two together is not a fun experience, I would imagine. And that seems to have been blamed on unforeseen rains. Was that something that was there when you were there, or was there sand with rocks in it?
Oh, there was definitely sand with rocks in it for sure. But yeah.
So the rain didn't grow rocks out of the sand.
No, I didn't see that. But yeah, I don't know to what extent. 'Cause, probably Neil would be best placed to answer that, but because he went both times. But yeah, for sure, there's lots of rocks in various types of ground. Some on hard ground, some in sand. So yeah, it'll be like a big mixed bag, really, of every type of terrain, and yeah.
So one of the other features of
have you got a new front rim then, Si?
Yes.
Okay.
So one of the other standouts, I think, is quite interesting. It's not something that they traditionally do that much of. There's quite a few loop stages this year. We've got some tied shoelaces around Riyadh, one at Hyle. It seems like stage 1 as well. The first time you went north of Jeddah, and you did quite a lot in the kind of northwest of the country. Yeah. That seems to have gone, right? Why do you think that is? Is that just because?
I'm guessing because they used that area twice already. But by that logic, they've also used other areas twice. But that up in that area was the kind of the most beautiful terrain.
So they got rid of it to make it more boring.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, which is a shame because it's properly epic up in that kind of area. So yeah, shame that we're not going there.
But otherwise, yeah, quite a lot of loop stages. I suppose logistically, loop stages are quite nice for the organisers and for the teams, and probably for you as a rider as well, because you don't have to pack your bags. So you effectively get stage 4, 5, 6, and the rest day all in Riyadh. That's 4 nights. Is that right? Have I done that right? 4 nights in Riyadh. That's a dream. From your perspective, that must sound like peachy. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just coming in and knowing where everything is and not having to work out. I don't know, unless the guy next to you leaves his generator on all night, and then then 4 nights next to it might make you want to kill him. So if you, I'm going to assume
gives you the opportunity to kill him, though, doesn't it?
It does. 4 nights. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. So have you looked at any of the stages and the lengths and got any that stand out as being particularly unpleasant or tricky, or where they might try and pull a killer day?
Yeah, I mean, you can only read so much.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've got like kind of the kind of provisional timing resume here on the distances and stuff. But yeah, the biggest kind of distances are stage 4, kind of down to Riyadh. That's projecting a kind of a later finish. So first bike estimated finish is 1 p.m. Which is later than all the other days in that first week, and yeah, it's the longest special, so it's 465 special on that one, which is roughly what it was in 2020, the day we rode into Riyadh.
So which ones are the short ones? Because the short ones are often, other than kind of prologue-y or end of race stages, the short ones are the ones,
the stinger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, the first stage around Hyle, that's 3:30. So it's not short, but it's shorter than most.
But that's called stage 1B. I'm not quite sure how that works.
Yeah,
because
so 1A is the prologue.
But it starts on, the prologue is on the first, and then the first stage, so stage 1B, is on the second.
Correct. Yeah.
Very strange.
Yeah.
And the start podium is not in Jeddah. It's in
No,
Heil.
it's in Heil. Yeah. So we've got a 590 kilometer liaison.
Why? That is definitely a decision process to make it awkward.
Yeah.
Cool.
Have they got any of those like cut-off stages where you've got to finish by a certain time?
Yeah, they will do. They haven't said which ones yet, but for sure, I'm guessing that stage 4 will have that. And probably there's another long one on stage 8 down to Wadi Adawasir. And then, yeah.
So when's the rest day? After which stage?
6.
After 6. So you do
the both loops and then it's a rest day.
In Riyadh, yeah.
So
Okay.
the one good thing about those 2 loop stages around Riyadh, so they send the bikes on one stage and the cars on the other, and then swap.
Oh, that's nice.
Except the day you swap, the track is going to be annihilated.
Yeah, there is that. Yeah, so that first day will be nice, but then that stage 6 will be rough.
So
It's that way round, eh? So you
Sorry?
it's that way round, is it? That you do?
Yeah, so the bikes do.
So at least the beat up stage, you
get a
coming
rest
into the rest
afterwards.
day.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's the longer one for the bikes. So stage 5 around Riyadh is 340, and then 6 will be 430 on a beat up track. So
Yeah, still better than getting run down by cars and trucks, though, in the halfway through.
Amen.
Yeah.
1000%. Okay,
and then riding a really rough half of that distance in a really destroyed track with other vehicles still trying to run you down.
Yeah.
I'd take the destroyed track all the way through every day.
And that's why you stopped doing Dakar.
Exactly.
So, a quick one before we get to the juicy part of the podcast. We've left it to last. We're going to talk about some privateers to watch because there are some interesting ones. There's always some interesting ones. There's this bloke called Simon Hewitt. He's quite fun. But there are also
awesome race number as well.
There are 3 youngsters. We'll call them youngsters because I'm now over 30. So I'm allowed to do that. I'm an old man. The first one was one that I hadn't noticed, was Conrad Pragonsky. I murdered that for sure. Son of Jakub Pragonsky. He became the youngest ever finisher last year. Totally slipped under the radar. Knocked Dutchman Robert van Pelt out, but I think only by a matter of months. I think they were both 19. He also finished pretty damn well. So that's one to watch. And then the other 2, I think there's going to be a little bit of a fight here. No one knows how far they'll go, but are American Mason Klein and Bradley Cox. Do you know who Bradley Cox is?
Son of Alfie.
Correct. I'll send you a prize in the post. But yeah, both of them did very well at Morocco Rally. Bradley Cox, I think, is actually a bit older than Mason.
Yeah.
He's had quite a successful South African enduro career, which doesn't sound that impressive, but sometimes that they've got good riders in South Africa. So
yeah, well, his old man was a little bit of a legend. For those that don't know, he won Roof of Africa 9 times, I think.
Well, I think Bradley Cox has now got 9 national enduro titles or something like that.
Yeah, okay. And Alfie was obviously, I don't know how many times, but he was on podium at Dakar like multiple times, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
So won stages, yeah.
And the other one, for any MotoGP fans out there, is Danielo Petrucci. He is also riding. I don't know what else to say about that. He's sponsored by Revit. He's got very orange kit. Yeah, so let's get to the good stuff. Pick your winner, bitches. That's what I wrote down. I was feeling fruity when I wrote this script. So yeah, pick your winners. Who's on your podium and why? So Si, there's some rules around this. For you, Bereda is not at this point. No, okay, that's off the limits. If you're new to this podcast, Si has picked Bereda for the podium / win for about 12 years now. We've only been doing it for 5, but he was just getting them in, and it's never gonna happen. Yeah, I mean, the dude's an amazing rider. He's got loads of stage wins to his name. I guarantee you, I'd put money, I'd go down to Betfred now and put like 100 quid on him winning at least 3 stages this year. But you're not allowed to put him in your podium.
At the end of this race, I'm going to go back through all these podcasts and take all the clips of you taking the piss out of me, and I'm going to put him in one video with him and the winner's podium next to it.
Except for this year, because if you go to put him in your podium, I've got the mute button. So
no,
I pick him.
Oh, look, we muted you, Si.
No, I think.
Oh no, sorry, we can't hear you. You saying about Bereda again? Sorry, yeah, go on. I'll stop playing around now.
It's so hard to tell every year, and I'm going to go with a Honda sweep of the podium. I think that new KTM is not going to be perfect, and as you know, we don't expect it to be perfect right out of the box, but they've gone a completely different direction with the bike, and I think they'll have not problems, but like they won't be able to push that kind of extra little bit that you need to win, maybe, or they'll have a little teething issue here and there. You know, there's a reason that Volkner didn't ride it at Rock and Sanders didn't ride it in Rock, and they've been doing so much testing on it, and I hope it'll be good. I'm a big fan of Sanders and Sunderland especially, but I think where they've got that Honda now and the riders that they've got on it, yeah, hopefully Bereda on there somewhere, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was Quintanilla, Breivik, Cornejo for the top 3.
In that order?
I'll go that order.
Oh, nice. I'm a big Sam Sunderland fan as well, but he didn't want to come on the podcast, so that's sad. What about you?
Yeah, it's I think it's like,
and we're out of time,
impossible. So
that's been great. No, a joke.
So I'm gonna go just because random. Quintanilla and Toby and Chucky. There you go.
Chucky, Daniel Sanders, for anyone who doesn't speak enduro. Here's an interesting thing. Franco Kaimi is number 6. How does that work?
Yeah.
He wasn't 6th last year.
No, but they're allowed. They've gone whole, like every other discipline. I think because it's World Championship now, they can pick their numbers, can't they?
What a boring number to pick.
I think Kaimi's out anyway. He's broken his wrist.
Oh, yeah, I did read that actually. They put someone else in, haven't they?
He can't.
They've got Aaron Murray, the South African guy.
Oh, he can't be your hero, baby.
No, exactly.
Amazing. Well, one person we haven't mentioned though that you've got to talk about because he's everybody's favourite, Dulciltrate.
We haven't talked about.
how many days of that's a totally different sweep. It's like your wild card, not where he's going to finish.
Yeah, your fantasy wild card. Where is Desaultre going to explode?
Yeah, well, how many days of entertainment do we get out of him? Because he will entertain. It's just a question of how many days. I'm going to give him 8 this year. I think it's going to improve.
I would before 8 days. Oh, he made more than 8 last year, didn't he?
No, I don't think
8
so.
or 9.
Yeah, he was leading after like 7.
Yeah.
So he's also into rugby. That's quite fun. How French of him. How many days are we going to get? Well, I'm looking at in 2020. They don't even say what stage he went out on. They just said abandoned.
Oh.
So he's gone out on stage 8. I don't know in 2020. In 2019, he finished 7th. No, that can't be right. He must have gone out on stage 7.
Why have we not talked about originals?
Because it's impossible to tell who's in it.
Because nobody cares.
Well, no, because what they've done this year is, they used to have the little crest that said like legend in it or something.
Yeah,
they've got rid of the writing.
Yeah.
No, they've got rid of the writing, and now it's just a colour.
A little flag.
Yeah. Original by Motul.
Mario Petrau.
Milan Engel as well. He's quite fast, isn't he?
Yeah.
I'm going to go stage 8. I think he's going to go out on 8 as well. Are we allowed to pick the same stage? We're going for Sai. I know it's quite a mean conversation because I want him to win because he's amazing to watch riding.
He's
but
the best rider ever to watch.
Yeah.
Norbert Dubois.
Going all the way, I reckon.
He's going all the way. He hasn't done that since he finished 87th in 2017.
So without
he has only ever won one stage as well.
Without Kirsten Landman being there, then what other women? Miriam, no doubt.
Miriam Pole and the Spanish lady who has been there, Sara Garcia.
Yeah. She's with me on the Dragon Tech team.
Is she?
Okay.
Is she on a full-blown rally bike this time?
Full-blown rally bike with support. I think she's just going for a good result rather than suffering in Malmoto. So, and I think her boyfriend is going to then try and do well in Malmoto.
The skier, Xavi Vega.
What about? Wasn't there a story about? Wasn't there Sandra Gomez going?
Yeah, she's there. Yeah.
So the sad news for anyone that followed it last year: no Bispo.
No
Bispo. So there is another woman called Audrey Rosset, I think her name is, or Rosset.
Yeah.
South African.
French,
same thing. Obviously not.
She's pretty good, eh? She's like solid enduro rider.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so she is in the marathon class. And she is number 100. So they obviously like her because they only give that number to people they like. And yeah, that answers your question. So that is probably it. We've put all the wisdom out there. I didn't pick anyone for the win because I'm not getting messed up in these trivialities.
Come on, you can't make us do that and not put your money where your mouth is.
I'm going to go. I think Brabeck wins. And I think Cornejo will be on the podium and Skylar Howes is going to be third. Because now he's not on the Bass team, he's on a factory team. And he just looks so happy. How can you not want that to do well? There we go. It's probably not going to happen, but that's what I'm going to say. At least I didn't pick someone that's not going, like Kaimi, because that would have been embarrassing. Yeah. There we go. That's it. That's the end of the podcast. That's all we've got time for. That's all we've got to say. Sai will be in Dakar shortly. He's now going to tell you where you can follow him, find out more about him, and so on.
Yeah.
Go.
I've got a Facebook page, Simon Hewitt Dakar 2022. I'll post daily or as much as I can on there. Instagram is Simon Hewitt 126. Got a website, simonhewitt.com. And that's about it. Yeah, follow along. It'll be dramatic, I'm sure. Either way.
Nice. Also, on a tiny side note, it's got nothing to do with what you just said. Daniel Sanders' hobbies are farming, beekeeping, and building motocross tracks. What an odd collection of things to enjoy.
Not really. His family runs a massive apple farm.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think the beekeeping thing is reference to his sting in the mouth last year. Do you remember that?
Oh, okay, yeah. That makes more sense. So that is it. That's the end of the podcast. I'm going to say it again. If you haven't watched our comparison video of our Tenere 700 project bike and Size rally bike, go and watch it. It's very good, very fun. We tried to do some Dakar-esque style drone shots. I didn't manage to crash my drone, which is good. That's rare for me. And it would help us out a lot. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we will probably have some more Dakar related podcasting. And I regularly do a podcast through Patreon. In time, it comes out on all your podcasting platforms as well. You can go back and see the first 2 seasons of that. And otherwise, remember, life's better when you're riding. What a great outro. All right, great. Thanks very much for coming along.
Cheers.